When one of the world's biggest conglomerates fails to establish reign over unclaimed territory in order to exploit the natural resources there, a marine force is deployed to remove the local rebels and allow the megacorp to maximize profits and shareholder value. Sounds familiar? No, we're not talking about Generation Kill, we're not talking about Jarhead either, we're talking about Aliens. The 1986 science fiction horror action movie is to this day regarded as one of the greatest movies across all those genres, introducing sci-fi and action tropes that would be copied, parodied, and imitated to this very day. The aesthetics? Beautiful. The subtle Vietnam allegories? Tremendous. The loadouts? Fantastic. Hotel? Trivago. It's time to take a look at the guns, see how they were used, what works and what doesn't. But wait, you might think to yourself, this is a futuristic sci-fi movie. How are you going to grade the realism of non-existent guns? And you'd be wrong to think that, because every single gun in the movie has its real-life counterpart, a platform they used for the design. Let's take the pulse rifle as an example. This is by far the most common firearm in the movie. It's an automatic submachine gun that fires 10x24mm caseless light armor piercing rounds. It's fitted with a pump-action 30mm underbarrel grenade launcher too. Does the face of the gun look familiar? Does the sliding grenade launcher foregrip also look familiar? That's because human creativity only stretches so far, and James Cameron couldn't exactly come up with a revolutionary weapon design just for this movie. Originally, the pulse rifles were supposed to be smaller, based on the Heckler & Koch MP5A3 with a straight magazine. In a blink and you'll miss it moment, you can actually see the original design for the pulse rifle on Frost's shirt. The reason this design was dropped is because James Cameron wanted a ton of muzzle flash to support the depiction of chaos and panic among the Marines, and this was just impossible with the MP5's 9mm rounds. The Tommy gun, however, could get the job done. It would also be the reason behind a few mistakes in the movie. This rifle is supposed to fire caseless ammunition, and yet we see casings ejecting from the rifles in a few scenes. This happened because 3 of the rifles used on set were real. They weren't just rubber props, and the shooting wasn't added in post-production. They were on the set shooting blanks.
He said it! He said it!
Obviously, someone in post-production overlooked this, and the movie was released with cases of caseless ammo showing. The grenade launcher was created by a Spaz 12 handguard, which is covering a cut-down Model 870 by Remington. After combining parts of various different weapons, the armorer built custom-made metal parts such as the barrel shroud and the telescopic stock to disguise the original weapons. That armorer, by the way, was Simon Atherton, who is a Hollywood legend, working on movies like Mission Impossible, Fury, the Bourne franchise, and other huge productions. The M41A is possibly the most iconic sci-fi rifle ever put to screen. In this movie, it perfectly encapsulates what everyone thought firearms would look like in the distant future, and as far as we know, it might be right. Surely someone in the year 2179, which is when the movie takes place, will stumble upon this video and let us know. The pulse rifle is still appearing in the franchise to this day, and this includes the new show Alien Earth. Speaking of, did you get a chance to see it? Let us know what you thought of it in the comments below. In the movie Aliens, the gun is in focus for 2 legendary scenes. Of course, the most famous one is the scene with Ripley dual-wielding the pulse rifle with a flamethrower. Is this the peak of human coolness? Probably. Is it realistic? Probably not, but it is possible if we're just looking at the physics of it. We know that the flamethrower tank is half full, and given the amount of adrenaline she's under, she could carry all that weight. The biggest issue she'd have with it is dealing with the tank, which, as you can see in this still, would get in the way of her legs. However, despite that, it would be possible for a person to carry 2 compact weapons like that. The fact that she can operate them, that's what's unrealistic. Remember, Ripley is not military. She gets a brief introduction to firearms earlier in the movie, and just a few hours later she can operate a pulse rifle with an underbarrel grenade launcher and a flamethrower? Even though she's one of the coolest action characters in movie history, there's no way she's doing all that. With all of that in mind, do you think it's possible? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Another iconic pulse rifle scene is the moment Hudson, full of panic-induced rage, mows down everything in front of him. We'll talk later on about how this scene and Hudson specifically are actually deeper than meets the eye, but for now, just enjoy the many cuts of this guy spraying everything in sight. Aside from 2 amazing scenes, this gun is also at the center of 2 mistakes that involve the gun's iconic ammo counter. The pulse rifle comes with an ammo counter, a very poorly placed ammo counter we might say, and that ammo counter misses its count 3 times in the movie. Happens here for the first time, Ripley takes out the mag and the counter still shows 42. The exact opposite happened earlier in the movie when Frost loaded his weapon and the counter didn't show anything. The last time it happens is during the final showdown. Ripley loads the magazine and the counter says 95 rounds in. Here's a fun fact. According to the Colonial Marines Technical Manual, yes, it exists. The rifle can hold 99 rounds, but it's recommended you only load 95 to prevent jamming. Anyway, just a few minutes later, the counter reads 42, even though Ripley didn't fire a single shot. As is the annoyingly meticulous nature of this channel, we'll be deducting points for that, but not before we take a look at other guns. The M56 is built on top of a German MG42 machine gun without the stock and the grip, with a bunch of motorcycle parts attached to make it look futuristic and with a target tracking system. To make this very heavy gun mobile, it's mounted on a Model 3 Steadicam harness, which is a camera stabilizing system used in filmmaking. Without this, the operator would tire out very quickly and the gun would be too unstable during fire. The most impressive thing about the fictional gun is the tracking system. There's an infrared detector above the barrel used for target tracking. It can monitor a 30-degree cone in front of the gun. The image caught by the detector is instantly displayed on the operator's eyepiece. When the operator opens fire, the arm automatically steers the gun toward the target. It is, in essence, a highly mobile heavy machine gun with an assisted smart fire function. It's by far the most powerful weapon the Marines pack in this movie, but it might also be the most useless one. This weapon is a testament to how misinformed and misguided this mission is, as they brought a huge machine gun to a close quarters battle. Truth be told, they didn't exactly know what they were going to face down there, and they found out that pulse rifles work against xenomorphs too late. But despite all that, these machine guns are the wrong weapons for this encounter. Claustrophobia is an important theme in this movie, and a huge machine gun is just not a weapon you want to be wielding around those tight corners. Vasquez, who made it clear early on that she loves her M56, drops it later in the movie in favor of her sidearm and a pulse rifle, and that should tell you everything you need to know about the usefulness of this gun in this combat scenario. Up next, we have the M240 Flamethrower, which is a futuristic flamethrower inspired by the barrel and head of the M2A17 flamethrower used in the Vietnam War. We'll just leave it at that for now, but remember that for later. Now that you've seen a close-up of it, you probably understand why it didn't weigh Ripley down too much when she decided to dual-wield it with her pulse rifle. If you take a closer look at it, you'll notice a similarity with the M16. That's because they used the upper receiver of an M16A1 for this gun. Another bit of realism hides in the scene when Ripley lights the xenomorph nest on fire. The flamethrower used for this scene is a real, military, liquid-fueled flamethrower. It's not a prop. Other scenes in this movie, and most flamethrowers in other movies, use propane-fueled toned-down props, but what you just saw there was actual flamethrower action, which is pretty damn cool. If you saw the extended version of the movie, you'd know that automated sentries make an appearance and they play a pretty big role in perimeter defense. These guns are based on MG42 machine guns, the same weapons used for the M56 smart guns, but they have been modified to resemble sentries. There's nothing special about these guns, but their use does pay off in the scene when xenomorphs try to breach the perimeter and the Marines helplessly watch ammo drop on the live display. Earlier in the movie, Hicks says that.
The good news, we got 4 of these robot sentries with display and scanners intact. They really kick ass. I think they come in handy.
And then later, all 4 guns run out of ammo in a matter of seconds, just delaying the inevitable xenomorph assault. Also, it's quite possible that this is the most realistic out of all futuristic weapons in the movie. Sentry guns exist in real life. The Phalanx Sea-Wiz is probably the most well-known one, and many countries are currently developing anti-drone sentries, so this concept isn't that sci-fi. Ithaca 37 might as well be encased in a glass box with "break in case of emergency" written on it in this movie. Corporal Hicks pulls it out when Lieutenant Gorman bans pulse rifle use out of fear of a nuclear explosion. This leads us to one of the movie's many tough guy one-liners.
I'd like to keep this handy for close encounters.
Ithaca 37 is the 4th most common shotgun in the world, and in 2003, it officially surpassed 2 million produced models. The variation in the movie is a custom-made stakeout Ithaca with special hunting engravings. We only see it get used once in the movie when Hicks shoves it in a xenomorph's mouth and blows its head open. The acid in the alien, which burns through pretty much everything, destroys the weapon. The gun has a very minor role in the movie overall, but it's cool to see that it's still used more than 200 years after its invention. The handguns don't play a major role in the movie, but they deserve a mention. The most eye-catching handgun is the Smith & Wesson 39 used by Vasquez, which is particularly easy to spot because of its ivory grips. The H&K VP70 is the more interesting handgun though. This gun looked pretty futuristic when it was first designed in 1970, and that made it a good choice for a sci-fi movie, which was confirmed by one of the movie's armorers. In the Aliens universe, this is the designated sidearm of all colonial marines, and it's nice to see it get some recognition because it's very rarely seen in movies and TV. In case it does look familiar, that might be because you used it in Resident Evil 4 under the name Matilda. The VP70 is actually a very weird gun, at least for its time. For one, it's the first polymer-framed handgun ever produced, which made it noticeably lighter than aluminum or steel-framed handguns, which were mainstream at the time. It also uses a double-feed magazine, something that's rare even today. Thanks to this technology, it could fit 18 9mm rounds. Aside from the standard semi-auto mode, this gun also has a 3-round burst mode, but you need to mount the stock to use this. The gun fires these bursts at 2,200 RPM. The VP70 is still in use by Brazilian and Portuguese forces, among others, and it's nice to see an obscure firearm get recognition in a popular movie. There are a few more firearms that make an appearance in the movie, but they're irrelevant so we won't waste too much time on them. You can see M16A1s and Colt Commandos in the background of this scene. For a brief moment, we get to see the Enfield L85A1, one of the worst service rifles in military history. We won't go down this rabbit hole again, but you should watch the detailed breakdown in our 28 Days Later video if you want to learn more about the fiasco that this gun is. And probably the most out-of-place gun in this movie, the Lewis gun. Apparently, nobody has any idea what a World War I and II era gun is doing on deployment 200 years in the future, but it might be connected to something we've been hinting at this entire movie, and something that ties in perfectly with our next segment. The scene in which the Marines get ambushed in Sub-Level 3 is famous for perfectly encapsulating their incompetence and lack of preparation. They go in there with the wrong loadout, bringing a machine gun so large it needs a steering arm into close quarters and packing rounds that could, and later do, cause an explosion that wipes out the entire base. The Marines themselves are painfully overconfident, completely ignoring Ripley's description of the enemy they're facing, convinced they'll go in there guns blazing and John Wick their way through.
Look, man, I only need to know one thing. Where they are.
Their glass castle is immediately shattered as soon as they're attacked, and reality gives them a hard kick in the nuts. They got no idea what they're up against, they realize they're underprepared, and before they know it, half their squad is torn up. The overconfident bravado is replaced by fear and screaming, which Hudson sums up so eloquently.
Your fault.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do?
Now, let's put our tinfoil hats on for a moment and consider this. Aliens is an allegory of the Vietnam War. This is a theory that's been circulating the internet for quite a while, and even before the internet became what it is today, there was a rumor that James Cameron wrote a Vietnam story which was shelved, and when he got the Aliens gig, he just rewrote that story to fit the Aliens universe. Now, colonial Marines aren't exactly sent to LV-426 to prevent the spread of socialism. Xenomorphs probably don't have a concept of economy, let alone socialism and capitalism, although we'd be happily proven wrong here, but the basic layout of events is the same. The Marines here represent American troops in Vietnam. They're all gung-ho and they have no idea what they're walking into. They use high-tech weaponry for their time, but they're still defeated by guerrilla tactics. What they thought would be a walk in the park quickly turns into a panic-fueled nightmare, which is again perfectly explained by Hudson.
Oh, man. Nose getting short. 4 more weeks and out. Now I'm gonna bite on this rock. It ain't half fair.
Lieutenant Gorman represents U.S. military leadership. He's inexperienced, poorly prepared, and poorly briefed. The Xenomorphs represent the Viet Cong. They rely on guerrilla tactics and their knowledge of the landscape to kill American troops. They hide in the air ducts, which represent the jungle and the tunnels, on an unknown planet which represents a faraway country. The surviving troops are saved by a dropship, which represents the huge role of helicopters in Vietnam. A lot of the weapons shown in the movie were used in Vietnam. That's what the Lewis gun is doing there, and the same can be said for every single firearm we talked about except for the VP70 and the L85A1. All of this probably sounds like something coming from your weird uncle, the guy who tried storming Area 51 in 2019 and is now banned from all government institutions, but there is some truth to it. Cameron himself admitted that multiple Vietnam events inspired this movie. What's most important to us, specifically for that ambush scene, is him saying that American firearms and training in Nam inspired the depiction of on-screen Marines. And when you wrap it up like that, it becomes entirely possible that Aliens is actually a Vietnam War movie. What do you think about it? Are there too many similarities to pretend it happened by chance? Let us know your opinion in the comments below. We already talked about Ripley's gun handling, which is amazing for someone who was just taught how to shoot hours before, but let's take a look at the other characters. The general theme following all Marines in terms of gun handling is being too casual with it. This was done on purpose as the director wanted them to seem overconfident and unserious. Corporal Hicks, played by Michael Biehn, gives us the most realistic gun handling, but even he makes a few mistakes. For example, here he doesn't check his corners and doesn't follow his line of sight with his rifle. Vasquez, played by Jeanette Goldstein, handled that machine gun like a pro, and her grenade launcher handling isn't half bad either. Also, the way she handles this xenomorph that jumps her is great, and we get to see a bit of improvisation. However, did you know that the person firing the gun actually isn't Jeanette Goldstein? The person shooting specifically in this shot is producer Gail Ann Hurd. Goldstein had very little firearms experience before filming this movie, and the recoil on her Model 39 was just too much for her, so James Cameron decided to swap her out for someone who could actually control the gun. Finally, we have Hudson, who is, according to the internet, the most annoying but also loved character in the movie because of his constant moaning, but by God is he the personification of chaos. Hudson leaves all fire discipline at the door after seeing his first xenomorph, and that pretty much makes him the most relatable character in this movie. The scene in which he just sprays everything in his sights is over the top for a reason. All in all, there isn't too much gun discipline and drilled gun handling in this movie, but it's that way for a reason. For one, movies weren't as obsessed with it back in the day, and also if you're willing to suspend your disbelief enough to believe xenomorphs exist, you can forgive a few grunts for not achieving SEAL level of gun handling. Secondly, the gun handling is supposed to look like that because the Marines are supposed to be overzealous. They're lax by design, and it later bites them in the ass. As gun nerds, there are a few things that we can appreciate in this movie. The most important one is just all the effort put into designing custom futuristic weapons based on existing guns. Remember, Simon Atherton welded motorcycle parts to create the M56 Smart Gun, and he kept realism in mind when designing the gun. He knew that carrying a gun as heavy as the MG42 would be no less difficult in the future than it would be today, so he decided to add a carrying arm to make it easy on the operator. This is perfectly realistic in the context of this movie, and that's just smart gun design. A similar thing can be said for the pulse rifle. This gun looks genuinely functional. Of course it doesn't exist, but the fact that it was built by combining pieces of 3 different guns that do exist makes it believable. The ammo counter, which turned out to be a double-edged sword because of the mistakes involving it, was also a great touch and seems like something that'd be useful in real life, if only it were positioned better. Another thing we have to shout out is the sound design. The audio engineering in the entire movie is fantastic, and it's a crucial building block in the tension, but it's also important when it comes to the pulse rifle because that firing sound is iconic. The audio team spent 2 entire days just working on developing this sound, this tiny little detail that may seem insignificant to some, and they achieved nothing short of perfection. No wonder this movie won an Oscar for Best Sound Editing, while it was also nominated for Best Sound Mixing among other nominations. So what's the final grade for this sci-fi movie? Well, we have to appreciate Aliens for what it is, a futuristic horror action movie, and we have to judge the guns within those confines. And when you think about it like that, there's nothing extremely unrealistic here. We're going to deduct a point for the ammo counters being wrong on 3 occasions. We just have to do that, but aside from that, this movie doesn't commit many sins. Sure, it's questionable whether Ripley, or anyone for that matter, could handle a pulse rifle flamethrower hybrid, but the movie makes it very clear that A, she's a survivor, B, the loss of her daughter is a powerful motivator to save Newt, and C, she's hopped on adrenaline like a gambling addict in Vegas. With all of that in mind, we can give her the benefit of the doubt and move on to give the firearms in the movie a 9 out of 10 for realism. When it comes to handling, it doesn't make much sense to grade that. All the poor handling in the movie was shoved in there on purpose, and it makes no sense to drop points for that. We should instead appreciate Aliens for what it gave us. For one, we get the crown jewel of sci-fi firearms in the pulse rifle, but more importantly, this movie raised the bar for sci-fi action in general. If only other movies in the franchise followed in its footsteps. What do you think of Aliens? Did you appreciate the grounded futurism? Did you get a chance to see the new show Alien Earth? And which movie do you want to see broken down next? Let us know in the comments below.